TV8.
For President Clinton, a lurch to the center. An exclusive CBS News poll shows the president having to scramble to regain popularity lost.
The killing fields of Bosnia. Shelling kills children on a soccer field in Sarajevo while the world watches in horror.
And Eye on America. Tonight, rich kids, poor kids, and yellow school buses. Why mixing could be fixing.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather and Connie Chung.
Good evening and welcome, Connie.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, after the long holiday weekend, America went back to work today, and so did Bill Clinton. Back to work on saving his presidency. A new poll shows his popularity plunging, so the president reportedly has decided to give up on a controversial nomination, and he's preparing to name a moderate to the Supreme Court, one with Republican support. And he traveled today to a stronghold of blue-collar and Catholic voters. A new CBS News poll out tonight finds President Clinton's support slipping away, his approval rating plunging to 37%, a record low for a new president. And on fixing the economy, the issue that got him elected, only 1 out of 3 Americans thinks Mr. Clinton is doing a good job.
Too much taxes, that's another thing. Tax, 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 tax.
I haven't seen a whole lot of change yet.
So where does the president go from here? First to Milwaukee to sell his economic program, describing it as balanced and fair.
This is not just a tax program. This is a budget-cutting program. This is an investment program in your future. This is incentives for the private sector to create new jobs in ways that have never been provided before.
As Mr. Clinton works to reverse Reaganomics, he's hired a top Reagan image maker to be one of his closest advisors.
When a president asks for help, there is only one good answer. How soon should I start?
He'll start day after tomorrow. David Gergen, advisor to Republican Presidents Nixon, Ford, and Reagan, signs on with Democrat Bill Clinton. Gergen will try to sharpen the Clinton message, move the president more toward what Gergen sees as the political center, and win back so-called Reagan Democrats. To do that, CBS News has been told, President Clinton will withdraw his controversial nomination of Lanny Guinier, a strong supporter of racial quotas, to be an assistant attorney general. And later this week, possibly Friday, the president is expected to nominate a centrist to replace retiring Justice Byron White on the U.S. Supreme Court. I asked CBS News consultant Joe Klein about the remaking of the president.
Well, you know, Dan, there's a quality that's most important in a president that's so simple we usually don't even talk about it, and that's the perception of strength. The president has to seem strong. And Bill Clinton, over the last 3 or 4 months, has wobbled back and forth on Bosnia. He hasn't defined the economic issue in his terms, and I think people are losing faith in him as a result.
Now he brings on a master image massager from the Nixon, Ford, and Reagan administrations. What does this tell us?
Well, I don't know what it tells us yet, and neither do many of the people in the White House who don't really know what David Gergen's job is going to be yet. If he helps to remind Clinton of some of the values issues that helped Clinton get elected president, like welfare reform and national service and reinventing government, reforming the government, he'll be well worth the effort.
The trip to Milwaukee, a move to get blue-collar workers, Catholics, suburbanites, what one time were called Reagan Democrats, back in behind him?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that he's trying to get away from some of the things that might have alienated them. Not only wasn't he talking about their economic issue, which was jobs, he got away from the values that made him seem like one of us, a guy who'd ride the bus. Now he's a guy who takes the plane and gets his hair cut for $200.
Joe Klein. To put President Clinton's 37% approval rating in perspective, there's one more number to keep in mind, 10%. The president has served only 10% of his first term, so there is still plenty of time to turn things around.
Well, at every turn lately, the president is running into an attack from Ross Perot. 7 months after the election, Perot is still campaigning. But as correspondent Vicki Mabry reports, the question is, campaigning for what?
In his position as the national nag, Ross Perot is here to stay.
It's kind of like our new tax plan. It's kind of like going to Mexico with all our jobs. Nobody's thinking it through.
He's all over the airwaves, berating President Clinton.
You wouldn't consider giving him a job anywhere above middle management.
Weekends find him on the road, preaching against tax and spend politics and government as usual. And his support is rising. The Texas billionaire took 19% of the votes in the last election. A CBS News poll shows that he would now receive 25% of the vote if that election were held today.
With Ross Perot, we have a strong, capable leader who's telling the world what's wrong with the United States.
He is basically running a pre-presidential campaign schedule 3.5 years before the presidential campaign actually begins. It's not going to stop.
Not so, says Perot, who claims his organization, United We Stand America, is an anti-politics-as-usual watchdog, not a campaign staff. But disenchanted supporters who do not approve of Perot's autocratic style disagree.
Ross Perot does not care for the people. Ross Perot cares for Ross Perot.
Still others speculate United We Stand America might use its clout to endorse state and local political candidates. Though when polled, 3/4 of Texas voters said Perot would not influence which candidates they'd vote for.
If it turns out that a Perot endorsement makes a big difference in congressional campaigns, then you might see both parties courting him.
And this week, Republican John Doolittle of California becomes the first congressman to openly swear allegiance to Perot.
He clearly symbolizes the forces of change throughout the whole country.
Whatever Perot's real motives are, he's got the current administration on alert. The president's aides have recently set up a group to study Perot's plans and weaknesses in preparation for his next attack. Vicki Mabry, CBS News, Dallas.
Today was a holiday for the Muslims of Bosnia, and some young people decided to ignore the war and choose up sides for a ball game. It wasn't long before their soccer field was soaked in blood. As David Martin reports, it was a grim reminder of the world's failure to end the slaughter in Bosnia.
The pictures of the aftermath of a mortar attack on a holiday soccer game outside Sarajevo are the cruelest possible mockery of the UN's attempt to create safe havens in Bosnia. At least 16 civilians were killed and many more wounded.
During 2 hours, we have 43 patients, all civilians, and 5 children. About 30 patients is with very serious injuries.
The mortar attack was the work of Serbs, but it followed a long weekend of heavy fighting in and around Sarajevo, which began when Muslim forces launched an offensive. One analyst says the fighting is the predictable result of the collapse of the Clinton administration's short-lived attempt to intervene in Bosnia.
I think that all sides now feel that they have been abandoned by the international community and above all by the United States. And that means that each is having to use military means to accomplish what they intend to accomplish.
Everybody and everything is fair game. Today, a UN relief convoy was hit by artillery fire, killing 2 Danish drivers and a local interpreter. Over the weekend, 3 Italians were killed in another ambush of a UN convoy.
In the face of all this violence and in the absence of U.S. leadership, the United Nations has so far been unable to decide what to do next.
A resolution now before the Security Council would use a beefed-up UN peacekeeping force to create safe havens around besieged Muslim towns. But it is not clear whether it has the votes to pass or the teeth to do anything.
Safe havens won't solve anything. They're just there in order to yet again to say we don't want to put any serious military effort into solving this problem.
In Bosnia, the U.S. and its allies care more about coming up with a policy everyone can agree upon than one that might actually work. David Martin, CBS News, the State Department.
Straight ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, rallies and arrests in Germany today in the wake of a neo-Nazi attack that killed 5 Turks.
And more scientific evidence that you are never too old to quit.